Welcome to Democracy Roundtable. It's Friday, May 1st, 2026, and we have a packed show today, dissecting a week filled with significant legal battles, critical Supreme Court decisions, and escalating international tensions. We're going to dive into the administration's ongoing challenges on immigration, a major blow to voting rights from the Supreme Court, and President Trump's intensified rhetoric regarding Germany and the conflict in Iran. Joining me today is my brilliant co-host, Nadia. And we're thrilled to have our correspondents Sarah, Maya, and James here to lend their expert perspectives. Nadia, it feels like we're constantly navigating a complex political landscape.
Thanks, Chris. It certainly does. Every week brings a fresh set of challenges and headlines that demand our attention and critical analysis. And this week, the courts have been particularly busy, setting the stage for some monumental shifts, both domestically and internationally.
Absolutely. Let's start right there with the courts. Sarah, we have a significant development on the immigration front. A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's attempt to halt the processing of certain immigration applications. This is a clear setback for the administration's efforts to tighten immigration controls, isn't it?
It is, Chris. This ruling is a significant win for immigrant advocates and a clear signal from the judiciary that the administration's actions are not immune to legal challenge. The judge's decision prevents the Department of Homeland Security from unilaterally halting these applications, underscoring the legal limits on executive power, even in areas like immigration policy. It's a reminder that the courts are a crucial check.
That's a really important point, Sarah. It feels like every policy this administration tries to implement, especially on immigration, ends up in a court battle. But that wasn't the only major court news this week. We also saw a deeply concerning Supreme Court decision out of Louisiana. Sarah, can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. This is arguably the most impactful legal story of the week. The Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, struck down Louisiana's second majority black congressional district, ruling it an unconstitutional gerrymander. This is the first major Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act since President Trump appointed 3 justices to the court. And its implications are profound. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has already called it an attack on a crown jewel of our democracy.
An attack on a crown jewel, indeed. Nadia, what are your initial thoughts on this? It seems to roll back decades of progress in minority representation.
It's deeply troubling, Chris. The Voting Rights Act was designed to ensure fair representation, particularly for historically marginalized communities. This decision, coming from a court with a conservative supermajority, signals a dangerous shift. It sends a message that states might have more leeway to dilute minority votes through redistricting, and we're already seeing the ripple effects.
Exactly, Nadia. We've already seen Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry suspend the state's May 16th House primary elections because of this ruling. They now have to go back and redraw the districts. And it's not just Louisiana. Florida lawmakers just approved a new congressional map that could give Republicans an advantage in securing 4 additional U.S. House seats, with Democrats already vowing to challenge it in court. This Supreme Court ruling is emboldening these efforts across the country.
It's a stark reminder of how interconnected our legal and political systems are, and how a single Supreme Court decision can have immediate, tangible impacts on election processes and ultimately who gets to represent us. From domestic legal battles, let's shift gears to the international stage, where President Trump's rhetoric and actions are creating significant ripples. Maya, James, President Trump has intensified his criticism of German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and suggested he might consider withdrawing U.S. troops from bases in Italy and Spain and also Germany. Maya, what's your read on this growing tension with a key NATO ally?
Chris, this is incredibly concerning for transatlantic relations and the future of NATO. President Trump's consistent criticism of Chancellor Merz, coupled with threats of troop withdrawals, seriously undermines the alliance. Germany is a vital partner, and these remarks come amid ongoing disagreements over the U.S.-Israel war against Iran. Merz has apparently criticized the U.S. approach to the conflict, and Trump has accused him of being lenient on Iran's nuclear ambitions. It's a dangerous path that weakens Western unity at a critical time.
From a national security perspective, Maya is absolutely right. Reducing U.S. military presence in Germany, Italy, and Spain would be a strategic blunder. These bases are not just about defending Europe. They are critical logistical hubs for U.S. operations across Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. It would severely degrade our ability to project power and respond to crises, not to mention sending a message of instability to our adversaries. The idea that this is linked to disagreements over Iran makes it even more volatile.
It feels like President Trump is almost deliberately trying to unravel these long-standing alliances. And speaking of Iran, James, we're seeing other developments on that front. A U.S. military commander is set to brief President Trump on potential new military options concerning Iran. What does that tell you about the administration's thinking?
It signals a potential escalation, Nadia. Briefings on new military options are serious and often precede significant policy shifts. Given the ongoing tensions, the U.S.-Israel war against Iran, and the president's public statements about a blockade of Iranian ports, it suggests the administration is actively considering a more aggressive stance. This is a very delicate situation with enormous regional and global implications.
And the economic implications are already being felt, aren't they, Maya? Brent crude oil prices have reached their highest level since 2022, exceeding $126 a barrel, after President Trump suggested the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports could last for months. This is a global recession warning, isn't it?
Absolutely, Chris. The Strait of Hormuz is a choke point for a significant portion of the world's oil supply. If that remains restricted for months, the economic fallout would be catastrophic. We're talking about rampant inflation, supply chain chaos, and a very real threat of a global recession. The president's pronouncements are not just political. They have immediate, tangible impacts on global markets and the everyday lives of people worldwide.
A truly sobering thought. Before we wrap up our discussion, I want to touch on a couple of other domestic items. Now, we saw news this week about 14 FEMA employees being reinstated after being placed on administrative leave for criticizing the administration's funding cuts. That's a positive development, isn't it?
It is, Chris. It suggests a potential shift under the new Secretary of Homeland Security. These employees were speaking out about critical underfunding that could jeopardize disaster response. Their reinstatement, after being sidelined for daring to criticize, is a small but important victory for transparency and for civil servants who believe in doing their jobs responsibly. It's a rare piece of good news in an otherwise challenging week.